Good afternoon, everybody. Very warm welcome to you all on this Friday afternoon. Happy Friday. Welcome to this afternoon's Careers Sitrep. I'm delighted you can join us as we're going out live on social media, Facebook, LinkedIn and YouTube. So warm welcome to you all. A very special edition today. This is, as you know, Careers Sitrep. We've been running for quite a while. A regular slot now, which deals with employment issues for the armed forces. And today we're going to be tackling the really exciting and interesting topic of military spouses and partners into employment. Well, it's been a pretty interesting start to the year, hasn't it? I mean, we've had already the publication of the Veterans Strategy Action Plan. Many of you may well have seen it or certainly heard of it. There's a lot of stuff in there. And actually, this subject we're going to be talking about today is actually covered. There's quite a lot of interest now across government, across the Cabinet Office, across the Ministry of Defence, to do more to support spouses, partners into work. Also, we've had the publication of the Family Strategy, which again happened last month, January 2022. So all these things are some good background things. But we're not going to be talking too much about that. We're going to talk about real issues and the real experiences. So we've got over about the next, up to about the next hour, we're going to be really covering the subject. So it's not just me. I'm delighted to be able to welcome some fantastic guests today for you all. Starting with Jenna Richardson. Jenna Richardson, very warm welcome to you from the Army's Federation, Families Federation Jobs. Again, we'll be hearing all about this amazing program, how it can support. I know Jenna, spouse of a Army, I think that he left quite recently, so you've had the experience of transition as well, and all of that. And again, really interested to hear your experience on that. So very warm welcome to you, Jenna. It's great to see you today.
Thank you very much.
We've got Lee Johnston. Lee works for RFEA, Forced Employment Charity, has been involved and effectively leading on the 3-year program, which is the Families Employment Program, which has done some fantastic things. So Lee, based down in the Southwest, also a spouse of a serving Royal Marine. And Lee, I mean, you've done a fantastic job, and I really look forward to hearing what you have to say today. So
thank you, Alistair. Thank you.
And also, and then last, we've got Jenny Monaghan from HEROPRENEURS, also a spouse of Royal Marine as well, and also serving. So we've actually got a fantastic cross-section here of experience. And HEROPRENEURS, of course, does an awful lot in this, and Jenny's got a great job looking after the marketing and event side for HEROPRENEURS, they're a great charity. So great to have you on board, as we say. I'm Alistair Halliday, Chief Exec of RFEA Forced Employment Charity, and it's lovely to be able to hosting this afternoon's Career Sitrep. So I think before we really kick into the meat of it, I'd be very interested to hear perhaps all of our collective experiences about, from a personal background, experiences of being a spouse and how you've found it when you first became one, and particularly then the experiences of when the times of transition as well. So Jenna, what's your own experience of this?
Well, my experience is it was all, very Jane Austen romantic. I married a soldier and moved away, and it was all very, very lovely. But at the time that I met my husband, I was teaching, and I had been for several years, and my own career within teaching was very much on an upward trajectory, and things were looking very bright for me. We got married, and then we were posted down to the Southwest, which was an amazing opportunity, and I was able to get another job in a school down on the South Coast, which was brilliant, and everything was rosy. And then when my daughter came along, that's when I realized that actually a career in teaching and military life weren't necessarily that compatible. I mean, don't get me wrong, there's some wonderful teachers that are married to military personnel and they make it work, but it's incredibly difficult, and it's just something that I found was just too much for me. So yeah, ultimately that's how I came into this life. I was complete civilian. I had no dealings with the military. It was all a completely new thing to me. And I to be honest, didn't really know what I was getting into. But it's all worked out brilliantly for me. So.
And it's great. And now you're landing this lovely job where you are now.
Yeah, absolutely, and it's an incredible position to be in. I feel very privileged to do the job that I do because I'm able to represent the community that I was very much a part of. I've experienced these issues firsthand myself, the frustrations that come with, the impact of military life on a spouse's career. So I feel like I really, I have a very privileged position to be able to be part of the Forces Families Jobs team, and to build the bridge between the military families community and those forces friendly employers who are so keen to recruit from that talent pool.
There's so much in there, Jenna. We'll come back to a lot of that, but it was interesting, the theme about teaching and as a profession as well, to be in this, and I'm sure we'll come back to that. It's very, very interesting indeed. So Lee, how about you?
I'm very similar to Jenna in terms of, I had no prior, dealings with the military, although I am from a heavily military focused town, may I say, which up in Scotland. And it had a sort of a marine base, so there was a presence there, but ultimately I wasn't from a military family. I was studying at the time, but part working in a pub, and that's kind of, I didn't actually know where I wanted to be career wise, but I think when I married my husband, I think that almost it made it harder for me to understand where I wanted to be and what career path I actually wanted to take, because albeit I was studying for accountancy, and that was exactly what I wanted to focus on, and then ultimately thrown into this sort of deep end of married into military life. Then we were moving, and again, I'm a Scottish girl, but I live in Devon. I can fully relate to not having that family support. We're both Scottish ourselves, so all our family and friends are in Scotland, and I suppose that social isolation part and not having that family around to help and support when you do want to kind of really focus on yourself and career. But yeah, that's kind of my sort of backstory. But I worked in education centres when I moved the first time. 14 years ago. I was really fortunate to land within a naval base up at Faslane and do some e-learning advisor role, and I absolutely adored that. That was supporting, that was advising, that was guiding, and that's kind of where my passion lies. And I was really fortunate to be able to move that through the drafts that we had. But ultimately, when we got to Plymouth, there was no job space for me. So I was 6 months out of job. And that was effectively, I felt like that was my career over. I felt like it had ended, because ultimately that's what I'd worked towards, doing that, advice and guidance piece. I'd, done the, been tutoring on the ECDL and doing all that sort of stuff and really building towards my own career. And then to move somewhere where I have no prospects, and I didn't, my children were that little bit older, and fortunately in school, I found that took a bit of a toll on my mental health, not having that focus and that confidence, and ultimately counting myself out of things, which we all do as as spouses and partners of the military. But that's kind of where I'm at. And then obviously I really landed on my feet with RFEA and been able to really give back into. Ultimately, I always say, who best to kind of support and guide spouses and partners out of employment or into that employment than a spouse out of employment herself. So I ultimately like to give what I didn't have, if that makes sense in terms of the programme. But yeah, that's a little bit about me.
Thank you very much, Liam. And that's so many things that get in there. Actually, it's very interesting. I think this theme, I suppose, of moving around the country, and that's the reality of being part of this sort of forces family, if you like. But actually, if you say, the difference between finding work, where you initially grew up in the northeast of Scotland and then to Faslane, and then more recently in the southwest, different employment areas, different issues. And again, I'm sure that's a theme which we'll come back to, this flexibility, etc. But no, thank you, Lee. And Jenny, I suppose similar experiences, slightly?
Yes, quite similar to Lee. So I grew up in North Yorkshire, around Catterick Garrison. My brother was a soldier, but we hadn't really had much of a family history as such in the military. And then at the time when I met my husband, I was working at a chemical site, and I had just finished my university degree, and I kind of didn't really know what direction I wanted my career to go in. So when my husband said, I'm based down in the southwest, do you want to move down there with me? I thought, okay, I love the beach, so we went for it. But I quickly kind of realised that there wasn't a lot of job opportunities, especially coming from the career that I thought I was going to have as a customer service rep. I didn't actually get a job straight away, and it took quite a while to get my feet grounded. I didn't know anyone in the Southwest, a new house, completely new environment behind the wire, as they call it. So it was quite hard for me to adapt, especially living so far away from my family. And then when we had my son, I kind of quickly realised that I don't know if I'm going to be able to have a job ever again, because one, we had no support from family. Two, I think we'd moved 3 times since my son was born. And obviously my husband has been away quite a lot. So trying to find a job that suited our family style, and the fact that we had no real help from families, I felt quite helpless, and my mental health was really kind of struggling. And after the last deployment, I thought I have to get back into employment, and I need to find me again. And that's when I applied for the RFEA program, and Lee was my advisor. And without Lee's help and without RFEA's help, I wouldn't have landed my my job at HEROPRENEURS now.
Well, Jenny, that's an amazing story, actually. I mean, I think there are, again, so many themes there about, bringing sort of childcare issues into the challenge as well, adding to moving around and all of these things. That is a very interesting thing. So we've got a question. Love this topic. The next fast, find it hard to get employment. I mean, I think none of us are saying any of this stuff is easy, which is why, we've all got fantastic experience on it, but overcoming the challenges as well. A LinkedIn user, whoever, thank you very much for the comment. Military spouse have bring so many talents to the table, don't recognise these themselves. And this is what we'll be coming through and we're talking about more in a moment. When partners deploy, they step as both parents running the households, caring for children, project manager. Wow, exactly that. No, I think that's a really good point. And actually, all 3 of you have very well articulated those sorts of things. I suppose I should even say perhaps my own experience, really. I served in the Royal Navy for 33 years. My wife was part of it. I mean, she was a teacher, Jenna. But I think we sort of made the choice for me not to move around. So I moved around. I was at sea an awful lot. So separation was huge, I suppose. And even when I was posted to Faslane or to Rosyth or to Plymouth or to Portsmouth and all around that sort of thing, we actually stayed in the same place. So that, I suppose, gave her more continuity. But the downside was, as we would find, it was me being away an awful lot of time, even in quote a short job, or when the ship was alongside in Faslane, at best that was weekending it. So that posed other challenges, I suppose. And I'd say one thing about my own experience. I also remember when you're outside very much the Navy or the military community, you get very well-meaning friends, other teachers, who say things like, gosh, how on earth can you cope? I can't believe how you can cope with all that separation. And that doesn't go down too well. So when you're outside that, I suppose there's more the support networks which exist across the 3 services. But so thank you. So Simon's come up with it. 3. Wow, yeah, inspirational stories. You're all role models. Thank you very much, Simon. Lovely comment there. And it really is. I just think this is so much for people to understand and listen and learn, actually, about these shared experiences. So I think that's a really lovely way to perhaps introduce the subject with your personal experiences. So I think I want to sort of turn to sort of not so much with our own experiences, but also what now do we think? What really is the attraction for employers? Why should the benefits of employing military spouses and partners, and what's our experience of how that's gone? And I suppose it does come into a link into the challenges that we face. We've already introduced some of these topics, but Lee, what would you say is that, yes, we perhaps more on the challenges, but also then what makes so many military spouses blooming good for employers?
Yeah, well, that LinkedIn comment said it itself, didn't it? That we from a spousal point of view, I can see how it's very hard to kind of not recognise the skills that we have and the skill set that we, I speak to people on a daily basis. And even myself, I've been really guilty of doing it where I go, don't really have many aspects for that role. Or, you look at something, you think, I've not done any customer service or communication, but when you really start to needle into the things that you've done in the past and jobs that you've had, and ultimately, the resilience and the adaptability that we all bring, and I call it the don't give up attitude. What is it I used to say? Autopilot. I used to just go into autopilot. When you got that draft that dropped on you with 2 weeks notice, or that deployment with 24 hours notice to go, or and then that child who's sick and you've got to kind of manage that. Ultimately, that gives us a wealth of skills that we just need to recognize as spouses and partners ourselves, and that can be female and male. That's a good thing about our families program, is we are open. We're open to male and female spouses and partners. They don't have to be, your spouse or partner can be ex-serving or serving. And also the ex-spouses, again, we had that as a comment. And ultimately, I think we just need to, it's that recognition piece. It's recognising the skills that we've got. And sometimes it's just talking over with someone, that light bulb moment. That's what I call it. You have that chat with someone for 15 minutes, and ultimately they go, oh my God, I didn't realise that I had all that, or didn't realise that was even a skill, and they really need to recognise the fact that we move around, we live in remote locations, we bring up a family, we hold down the whole household. We're doing it on a daily basis. We communicate. We admin. We talk about admin. It's house admin, family admin. We do it all, and I think it's, like I said, it's that recognition piece and actually taking account of what we do and giving ourselves that massive pat on the back and going, do you know what? Actually, I do a good job here. And any employer would be really, really grateful. And like probably Jenna could touch on, is the employers recognise that. They see what we can do. And some will say, they've got the best workforce when you look at sort of spouses and partners and the things that we can adapt to change. And like you said, Alistair, that remote location and moving around, ultimately we build up our own social bubble again. We build that up. We ultimately move to somewhere where we don't know anyone, and we utilise our sort of confidence and our skills to be able to go out and build that life again. And if we're doing that maybe, 2-3 times in the last, 10 years, then ultimately, we're adaptable to change.
I mean, that's an amazing point. I mean, I really like it. I mean, there could be a theme here about, how much employers do recognise this, or I suppose a bit of a question I'll ask us, all of us in a way, but do we collectively need to do more to educate our employers to know the value of this? I mean, Jenny, what's your sense on this?
I think we do. A couple of years ago, before I had my son, I had a really negative experience when I went for an interview, and I won't name the company, but they saw on my CV that I'd moved around, and I told them that I was a military spouse, and they knew that I didn't have a child, and they asked me if I was going to be moving soon and if I was going to get pregnant anytime soon. And I think they have, that company, or some companies have quite a negative kind of not experience, but they have some negative views about military spouses because they move around quite a lot, and because I don't think they have got the education of what we do, and who we are as people and the attributes that we have.
A great point, Jenny, and I know Jenna. I know we'll have a view exactly on this point about more education of employers, because clearly there are a lot of very good employers out there, get it completely, and there's probably an awful lot who haven't a clue. I mean, that is in the wider space as well. But just a moment ago, that lovely comment there from Rich T, actually recognising the transitory nature, I suppose, of many people's experience, and that itself brings a challenge to what we're talking about. It may well be that you'll be established in a role somewhere, and then the needs of the service, the needs of the family, etc., have to move somewhere else, and then you start again. And but I think the other point that Lee I pick up on is that resilience. And this bit, I know you say on autopilot, the experience of being a military spouse, a partner, to go through all the various sort of things, does bring in an awful lot of tremendous characteristics, which is good. So here's William Cairns. I think employers need to understand the sacrifice also made by spouses in support of our armed services, and for definite, the transferable skills they bring. Will there ever be a chance for spouses attending job fairs? Well, that's a good question. I think I should know the answer to that, shouldn't I? I think they do, don't they? But thank you, Bill. I mean, that's a great question. So we're starting to open up the subject, but Jenna, what's your sense? There's the two elements here. One, a bit of the challenges, but obviously a lot of people offset those challenges. The strengths then, what are the real strengths and the benefits for employers for getting out this amazing cohort of people?
Well, I think, I completely agree with what both Jenny and Lee have said in terms of, this workforce has those intrinsic skills that just come as a result of being a military spouse, the flexibility, the problem solving, resilience, they're all keywords that really do illustrate what an amazing community that is. But also, aside from those sort of softer skills, you've also got an incredibly qualified and highly experienced workforce that is largely untapped. And last year's FAMCAS report, 46% of military spouses were educated to undergraduate level. So that it's just under half have got that sort of level 7, level 6, 7 higher level of learning. And it's this cohort of incredibly talented people. But if I go back to reinforcing the point Lee made earlier, a lot of these people do not realize that they have these talents, that they have these skills, and that these employers are actually looking for this from the community. But also the employers are actively, many employers are actively recruiting from this community because they identify, they recognize, and they see what our community can offer to their workforces. And I mean, only last week I was invited to speak to, I won't name drop, but a very big British defence company who actively want to recruit from our talent pool. So they asked me to go along and have a chat with their recruitment teams about what you would potentially see on a military spouse's CV. Things like the gaps in employment, the having moved around an awful lot. And it was, things like, I explained to them, a gap in employment doesn't mean that somebody didn't want to work. It may mean that, a person has been out of the country on a posting for 2 years and, working overseas, it's logistically and legislatively a bit of a nightmare. So for a lot of people, it's just almost impossible. So those 2 years potentially, on a cycle, typical army cycles, that's 2 years where that person may not have worked. It doesn't mean they were lazy and didn't want to work. It was because the system wouldn't allow it. And I think having the platform that I have to be able to educate employers on that sort of side of things, it's really it's quite powerful. And then they go out and speak to other employers in the same sectors, and then you hear from them as well. Oh, can you come and deliver a presentation to so and so? And there are some employers. Don't get me wrong. There are employers, more employers that than I'm happy with, that like Jenny experienced, but there are an awful lot who are really forward leaning into recruiting from this community.
I mean, that's so much in there. That's really, really moving. But I think it's true. And I think my sense is that there's a job still to be done, and there's so much has happened. And when I look back at the last 20, 30 years, when really there was very little attention to the whole subject at all. I know from personal experience. But now far more organisations, and indeed defence, all three services are now have woken up to realise this is a major thing. Daniel, lovely to see you. Really pleased I've worked for an organisation that actually sees the value of military spouses, adaptability, resilience, stakeholder engagement. And I think I know that you're in Barclays now, actually. So that's great. So Barclays is a really good employer, doing stuff in the space as well. I know we a lot of programmes. There's, ladies and gentlemen, a lot of really great comments coming in, and please do keep them coming in. So, and I managed to sort of see quite a few. Really, really inspiring comments brought on from the discussion we're having. I know that the team will managed to push up as many as we can. So here's Chris, as a male military spouse. I like so many military spouses. I had to give up my career for my wife. And it's a very interesting point that, I know people tend to think the subject is about female, but it's not. There's quite a few. And I think the percentage certainly of male spouses as well doing an amazing job. I seem to remember at the start of the families programme, there was something about 20% male. It might have been in the early stages when, in terms of the total number. But that's a great point. I'm just going back into some of the other the comments. I mean, some really Somebody said, yeah, military spouses are like chameleons. I mean, interesting, and that's a positive thing. It's not being able to move and then morph into what need to be in a new area and indeed a new role. I mean, it's an interesting thought there. And I think, again, somebody said military spouses bring so many talents to the table, don't recognise these themselves. That this is a theme we'll come back to, and it is actually similar to the serving partner as well. When people leave, quite often people don't really recognise the amazing strengths they have. So that's brought on sometimes a bit of being underconfident in interviews when actually they can be proud of their experience. So there is a similar thing. I mean, there's a big read across, isn't there, across partners. I think that's very interesting, and just to see if there's any more points. But I think it's worth saying. I've already said that there wasn't that much support around a while ago. Particularly last few years, it's really increased to a position where I think there is some fantastic programs which do support. And whether it's enough, whether the government needs to do more, that's a live question which is being discussed right now. And there was a CTP trial on this last year, as many people know. But it'd be interesting to know, in broad terms, what your programs do and what you can offer. Perhaps Jenna, I mean, following from what you were just saying there, describe the program in the round and how people can connect with you.
Okay, so Forces, Families, Jobs is our tagline is that we bridge the gap between the military community and forces friendly employers. So we don't offer a service in terms of, we don't offer CV writing or, anything along those lines, employability skills. What we do is, one side of it, we have a jobs board. So that is where forces friendly employers are able to advertise their live vacancies directly to our community. All of our employers, it's completely free of charge for them, but they must be signatories of the Armed Forces Covenant, and that is our way of, firstly, proving their commitment to the Armed Forces community, but also it's that second level of support for the spouses that obtain employment through that, in case it would be needed. The other side of it is very much a way to signpost for other services support and training. We have RFEA listed as one of our careers advice options. Lee has been and done some wonderful work with us, like webinars on CV writing and bits and pieces, so that we collaborate with others operating within this space, and in that sense, our focus is very much promoting the vast number of options there are for spouses to link in with the right organisation for their particular circumstances. So like I say, we don't offer specific bespoke service as such, but we do basically let spouses know what their options are and allow them to make that choice for themselves.
I think, and that's a great segue into the others. And I think there's a real key point I want to get across to everyone who's listening, is the great collaboration which comes across the sector. I'd say there are other subjects which quite often is not the same amount of support and collaboration, but the fact that the referrals, the cross referrals, so you might be doing somebody referring to RFEA or the HEROPRENEURS or so. I mean, these are key things. So I think anyone watching who does need this support can come into the ecosystem, if that's the right term. Top. And then where you actually need get the best support can be found out. Now that's great stuff, Jenna. I mean, just one thing I just reflect on the on employers again. I mean, we know there is now a campaign running or about to be run about changing employers' perception about veterans in the community. And I see this as part of that in the same thing. And whether it's bolted on or included in it, promoting the value, in this case, in the other case of veteran service leavers to employers, this is absolutely key to it as well. I mean, frankly, they're missing out if they're not tapping into this amazing talent pool. Jenny, what's your, we go through what you do at HEROPRENEURS, and so how do HEROPRENEURS support?
So HEROPRENEURS, again, is a military charity that we offer bespoke mentoring to those that are currently serving veterans and their spouses who have a business idea, or they have a business and they need help, or they need advice, support and guidance. So what we do is we then partner them up with a mentor who is specifically it's all tailored to what their business idea is, and it runs for 12 months. It's a free program. And we have events throughout the year. We are looking to do some more face-to-face events, COVID pending. Last year we did most of our events online, and yeah, so I think over the last year and a half we have had more military spouses come through to our charity. And they are so engaging, and a lot of them haven't heard of HEROPRENEURS, so this is something that we want to do. We need to promote HEROPRENEURS more, yeah, it's a wonderful mentoring program.
Thanks, Jenny. I mean, it is a great thing to bring up the value of or the opportunity which happens in self-employment. I mean, many times, we think about, companies, employers need to get a job somewhere. And I think it's fair to say, as we've seen in the employment cluster, that and I'll perhaps come on to the COVID impact, but in the early days when employers were suddenly stopping a lot of vacancies, and suddenly jobs were suddenly becoming rarer. And those sort of times, people, service leavers, which obviously includes now spouses, are more inclined to think, actually, I'll give self-employment, running my own business, which does ally itself a lot to perhaps working from home. You can run your day, have that flexibility. And I think in that, it is key for, if those people who are interested in that, getting the good quality advice, because it's a bit like, Dragon's Den or The Apprentice or so. If you're setting up your new venture, you've got to have the right idea and the right mentality and perhaps a bit of training or whatever. And it's important that, I think they access really good advice, like as HEROPRENEURS does. So it is a whole subject around self-employment, which I think is very useful. Simon, again, very good point. Yeah, lack self-belief. That's a very lovely point. As role models like you, with support and service you provide, that can help. I mean, great, because you've all gone through this and with your own experiences, and can get across this thing about, for people to really have confidence, and know that they bring skills. The other thing to say, and I don't want to sound complacent about it, but right now it is a job seekers market. With the we're running the country today has got more vacancies than it has done for 20 years. But I'm not saying that means there's a regional picture. And of course, if you're living in Americourt or in Catterick, or let's say Tidworth or something, further away from a lot of employers, there's a regional patchwork thing over there. So there are still other challenges. But I think that's very useful, getting the cross section of the way the programs can support. So Lee, and tell us about the RFEA's program, what you do.
So RFEA Families Programme was devised 3 years ago, actually, this month. It was released in 2018, 2019, and it was predominantly set up to support spouses and partners of serving and ex-serving on their employment journey. So what we do here at the Families Programme is we do all the bits in between. So the bits that Jenna was talking about, the employability skills and the skill recognition, the career advice, not really realising what it is that they want to do. That's kind of the piece that we looked at, the CV construction, CV reviews, the application support, whether that be for civil service or whether that be for the NHS or different sectors, we can give that, that advice. And we can help tailor, because I think that's a key point as well, is ultimately very, very early on before I got this job, I was really guilty of sending out the same CV to every employer that I applied for, but ultimately knew that until I did this job, that ultimately it maybe wasn't the right way to do it, and really tailor it and homing in on the skills that I've got. And then the interview techniques and the interview prep, because again, if you've never been for an interview for 10 years, Alistair, that can be really a daunting prospect. And some people just get really, nervous with the interview, interview style. So we can help with everything in between. But I think as the programme has grown over the last 3 years, and again, I've been really fortunate to be on the programme since the very start as the first advisor. But ultimately, as we've grown, now we've got, fantastic advisors on the programme, Joanne, Tanya and Claire. We've managed to be able to grow the support that we're able to provide. So ultimately, where we used to see it as in, people would, and every individual is different. And I think it's really key to map that in, that we are not here to just say, right, we're here to focus on the employment, getting you into a job. And ultimately, we're here to do all the bits in between. And we're here to be that support and guidance service, to be able to say, right, what is it that you would like? And I suppose it's where the coaching and part comes in, being able to kind of draw out exactly what it is that they want to focus on. And we tailor that to each individual need. We really work down, we home in on a plan, we do action points, we set short-term goals, so ultimately they feel motivated and they feel like they're moving on. But it's not moving away from the financial gain piece, but what people I'm seeing now is that that word of, I just want something for myself. I want to feel like I'm worthy of something. I want something that I can really ultimately focus on. So whereas, financial gain's great, and if people really need a job and work in that point, then we can ultimately support that. Absolutely. But if there's that part where they're like, I really feel like I'm not quite job ready yet, well, what can we do to work on that together and to be able to support them with that? And, as you've all seen, we work really closely with Forces Family Jobs, because you offer that jobs board and that training piece that's maybe missing from not what we do, but ultimately, if you guys are doing it, why reinvent the wheel? We work like that. If you've got someone who comes to you and says, not even job ready yet, you ultimately know where to come, and then we kind of collaborate that way. Same with Jenny at HEROPRENEURS. We don't aim to be the self-employment experts. I can't remember everything, I'll be honest with you. So ultimately, there is you guys out there who know and are the experts in this. And ultimately, all working together with outside organisations, ultimately, we're just making sure that there is the right amount of support for anyone who needs it, and whether that be ex-spouse, ex-partner, divorced, widow, we work with them all, and we're able to offer that support, and I think that's key. But that's what we do here at the programme, and like I say, it's about the individual and it's about what they want and homing in, and that's where I absolutely manifest, because I just love doing that. Seeing someone achieve their short-term goals and seeing that confidence build is just out of this world.
Oh, it's fantastic to hear you say that with such enthusiasm, as always, Lee. I mean, really good. And again, this point about collaboration across the sector. There is so much support for people who are needing it or wanting it to be aware of. I think that frankly, the teamwork is terrific. It was interesting. I think now it's fair to say that the coverage of all the programmes, collectively now, I'm talking. It does reach right across the UK. And even though people are in certain areas, I know, Lee, you're down south, in fact, Jenny as well. I forget where, Jenna, you are based. Are you more in...
I'm in Dorset, so I'm down south as well.
Yeah, down. But I mean, with now so much stuff being done online, and actually a lot of online working as well, it means that actually the sort of geographical constraints, which would have existed 10 years ago and certainly 20 years ago, crikey, have really been reduced. I suppose it's worth just spending a moment just what the experience of the COVID, the pandemic, which we, goodness me, I've touched a wood, but we're coming well out of now, but we've all gone through this. How has that impacted on military spouses and partners, particularly finding work? Does anyone have a view on that? Or Jenna, what's your sense on that?
Well, I think in the first days when employers were all being sort of very understandably very careful, it was a little bit more difficult for military spouses. But I think ultimately, I very much believe that we would, as a sort of society, we would have moved towards this remote working model eventually. But I feel like COVID has forced the issue, and it's made organisations who, and we all know of them, organisations who were very resistant to the remote working model were forced into it. And actually, they're now seeing that actually we can have this, it does work, we can save money, we don't have to have people in offices all the time, that saves, it saves us cash. So I think ultimately the world's moved forward, and it's brought up these more flexible remote opportunities, which are ideal for military spouses. Having said that, it's also flagged up some additional difficulties whereby there's it's not always as mobile friendly as what we'd like it to be. There's a big piece of work going on at the moment with the Families Federations and the Ministry of Defence with the overseas piece to try and break down this misconception that you can take your laptop and you can go to Cyprus and there's no, it's like you're in the UK. It isn't. And there's so much legislation and red tape surrounding that. So whilst I do think it has it's really highlighted and brought remote working and that model into its own, and that's a great opportunity for military spouses. It has highlighted a few extra issues.
It's interesting you say, Jenna, because you could almost sort of think, perhaps, I'm not saying the whole thing has been a good thing, because it's been a massive challenge for the country, but actually on that, thinking about making remote working the norm, as what for a lot of people, that actually has suited, hasn't it? I mean, many spouses and partners, with other issues, things on their time. So that's probably a positive thing. And of course, then now where we are, as I mentioned a moment ago, it's a job seekers market. Companies across the country are desperate for manpower. So we could say right now the technology is there. Perhaps it is the best time, or a really much better time for spouses and partners to find work. Slightly as a result of it. Jenny, we already mentioned the self-employment piece. Are you still seeing that since sort of COVID, more people wanting to do the self-employment thing?
Yeah, I think over the last year and a half, we've definitely seen an increase in a lot of spouses and also veterans coming into self-employment, especially because of the flexibility of having your own business. But obviously with HEROPRENEURS, we're seeing a lot of people without the experience, and as a charity, we need to educate the veterans and the spouses on how to run a successful business without getting any financial gain ourselves. So that's really important to us.
Yeah. No, it is interesting. We've had some great comments actually. I know Zoe talking about, I know she's Royal Marine Charity actually does offer support also for Royal Marine spouses, which is good. There we go. It's up on the screen as well. So well done, Zoe. Good to see you. I know somebody also has mentioned about, Rolls-Royce deserves a lot of praise as a good company for veterans and this as well. Yes. So the pandemic, in fact, Lee, was that your experience as well?
Yeah, the flexible working options, I think that was kind of key. And I think also we were seeing where people were registering because their employment was at risk because the employer wasn't open to that flexible working, or things were a bit up in the air with we know with the furlough scheme and the redundancies that were being made, and it was just a really uncertain time. But ultimately, actually, to put a positive spin on that, there was there was a couple of instances where they'd come back and they'd said, actually, my employer's been really open with this, has worked around this in terms of being able to give me that remote working, being able to offer that where I just I go in maybe one day a week and I could do this. So ultimately, I think what Jenna said's right. I think it opened up employers' eyes to see, actually, remote working doesn't mean hindrance. Our employees are actually probably a bit more, if not the same, or if not more productive at home, and being able to do this and manage their time better by not having to rush to and from, parking up, getting into work, coming out the office, getting back home. And I think it ultimately as well helps with the childcare aspect as well. So we always say, it's not, a remote working role doesn't, you can't physically do that when you've got your child at home 24/7. Ultimately you still need that childcare aspect. But what it does is it alleviates that stress of if you get that phone call of that, your child's sick and your husband's deployed and you've got no family to support, or, and having that bit more of an understanding that, we're kind of all up against it. But yeah, I think ultimately, employers were starting to see the benefits of this, and like I say, people on the programme were starting to see that, and employers were being a bit more understanding with that, and ultimately find themselves in better positions, which was great for us because nobody wants to see anybody out of a job ultimately. But again, it's just making sure that they know that support's there if God forbid that time comes. So, but yeah, that was kind of what we were seeing. But like Jenna said, people are starting to see that remote workings is actually a positive and a benefit.
I mean, yeah, it is. I mean, it's amazing we're talking about the positive impact of the pandemic, aren't we? Which is exactly right, as you say. Hybrid working. Good point from Zoe here. Hybrid working employs a wider net.
Yeah.
I think it's a very positive thing, and I think the thing about people's sort of domestic circumstances. I mean, going back 2 or 3 years ago, it would be a complete no-no. Let's say to somebody in a meeting where an animal wanders around across their desk, but it's sort of become that's what happens, isn't it? Really, I think that everything is changing in that context. I think there's a couple of things I just would say. I mean, perhaps more. It is worth reflecting that for a start, there's a fantastic group of people here, as we know, which actually is got to be used more by employers, and I think we'll see that, which is great for the country, for the economy, and all that sort of thing. I mean, it's obviously, it might be stating the obvious, it is a very, very strong and good thing to be done for those partners who are still serving, because it is a retention thing as well. So I think it's very important. Again, I think the MOD and the Defence have woken up to this quite at a late stage, if I'm honest, because actually, if spouses and partners are in employment and happy, feel fulfilled, etc., that may well be offset that issue, which you quite often hear about, which may well cause the serving partner to leave their service early. And the other point is, and again, I'll be interested if there's any other comments on this. It also, I would say, it de-risks transition. So if before the serving partner leaves, if the partner is in work, then there is not quite so much of a worry when they go through that transition period. So to say de-risk transition, it's a grand words really, but I think that's another key point, which is why this whole subject is so important. And I think that's what we're now seeing, and so more support. So just checking down through the comments, because we've got about another 15 minutes or so to go. Yeah, really good points. Remote working, so many benefits from Chris. Thank you very much indeed. So some great comments coming in. Please keep them coming, and we'll try and ask them, or indeed any questions that anyone's out there. As I say, this is going out live on YouTube and LinkedIn and Facebook. So whichever one you're on, please do jump in with any good questions. But so I think as we come towards the last sort of bit, I just want to think if we can crystallize this side for anyone watching who's either in the situation, perhaps is looking for work, or is about to go through, their partner's about to go through transition. What are the top tips? What can we say from based on this amazing experience that you've got and you've gone through, etc.? What would you say are the top tips for anyone who might be looking for some support? Jenna, what's your top tips?
I think the first thing for me is, please do not feel like you are on your own. There are people like myself and Jenny and Lee who we've all been there. We get it. We know exactly what it feels like. But, please be assured that there is a whole network of support available to you. And, it's a bit of a shamed pitch for FFJ again, but, it's there, and it demonstrates so much of what is available to you, and you can access so much support through the portal, and you can find all the different organizations that are offering the support that is bespoke to you that you need. So I think the top tip for me is to get into this virtual world and look at all the different types of support that is available to you. Be it that you want to work in admin and you want to do this or whatever. There's a portal to find a job. You may not know that you may want some support with your employability, confidence, skills. There's someone else who can help with that. You might want to set up your own business. There's so much support out there, but I think it's coming back to that self-confidence, self-belief. You are not on your own in this, and there's loads of us that are are here to support.
That's great.
I think it also goes back to that ecosystem as well. So even if you reach out to one and we are not the right fit for you, we will help and point you into the right direction as well. And that's what I've been finding over the last six months since I've been at HEROPRENEURS. I have quite a few emails that come through that RFEA has pointed someone in our direction. So if you don't know where you're going to go, then we can help with that as well.
Thanks, Jenny. And there's Becky coming. I know Becky very well.
Oh,
Embarrass you, but well, that's lovely. I mean, that says it all, doesn't it? Ability to juggle home life and with all this a busy role, which comes back to the sort of on autopilot point that Lee mentioned earlier on, and about the resilience you've all sharing, which is tremendous. That's a very good point there. I mean, I really like these top tips. Not on your own. You're not on your own. Self-confidence, self-belief. They're all one ecosystem. It can be referred along. Lee, what would your top tips?
Don't discount yourself before you've even discussed it with someone. And I think I think ultimately we're all really guilty of not having belief in ourselves, and ultimately you can be the most confident person in the world and ultimately still have that element and that little glimmer of self-doubt. And I think ultimately, like Jenny said, what fits one doesn't ultimately fit the other. And I think that's what we've got in terms of support that's, you know, is out there, that it's all tailored around individual needs. So, you know, ultimately, you know, we all feed into each other. And I think it's key to point out that we, you know, here on RFEA Families, we've enrolled and helped over 700 spouses and partners throughout the whole time of the, Jenny being one of them, and throughout the whole of the programme, which is just phenomenal. And whether that be, you know, making one short-term goal, or whether that's straight into employment, you know, that's ultimately what we do here. And I think the first tip would be just don't count yourself out. Reach out and ask for help, whether that be just that one question you ask. And I always remember someone else saying to me as well, wake up every morning and just think one thing positive about yourself on that daily basis. Just when you wake up, have a think about one positive, you know, attribute that you've got or skill that you've got in terms of, and you know, it could be a really rubbish day where you wake up and you think, really not feeling it today. Just think of that one thing that, you know, ultimately that attribute that you've got, and really believe in yourself. And I always say this to clients is, you know, don't count yourself out, because yourself is enough. Be yourself, because you are enough. And I think I remember saying to Jenny as well is, ultimately, you know, we survive on not taking risks in life, but ultimately we might think, I just can't see a way out, or I don't see a way past. But I always remember saying to Jenny, and I have said this before, regret the things you do, don't regret the things you don't. And ultimately, you know, if it doesn't work out, then ultimately at least you can sit back and say, well, you know what, I gave it my best shot. And that's what we're here for. We're here to help you with that and motivate and inspire you and get you moving forward. And like I say, even if it's just by asking the question of, what do? I have no idea what I want to do for a career. Don't really know why I'm reaching out. You know, just ask. That's why we're here. Top tips, and tailor your CV. There's another top tip, because ultimately, again, very guilty of sending out the same CV to everyone. But ultimately, that, you know, we have got a fantastic set of skills. We need to showcase them. We really need to home in on them and make sure that employers can see and really, you know, ultimately see what fantastic candidates we are as spouses and partners.
That's brilliant. I mean, this is obviously a gold dust type sort of sprinkle of great top tips here, isn't it? I mean, I have to say, I think that there's some which have a direct read across to the serving partners. I mean, the thing about confidence, but I reflect another thing, is about modesty, and it's about something intrinsic about people who serve, and it's being part of a team. And you hear people are being very much, you know, when they're interviewed on television, they've just done something amazing, and they say, well, actually, it wasn't me, it was the team. Everyone talks about the people, their mates, their friends, or whatever in the ships and units and the regiments, etc. And that is reflected, I think, across the partners and military spouses. I would include all of us naturally used to an organic thing which have been slightly understated, quite modest. That doesn't always is not reflected actually in society, when a lot of people who can be the reverse of that. And so somehow people have got to move on from that. Well, but still retaining their, you know, not changing character and becoming a real, you know, completely different sort of person. But actually, it is the time to stand up and be confident in the ability to be able to pitch up to an interview, change the CV to reflect it. As Joanne coming out, be able to support work while supporting my husband's career, allow me to continue being me, which is so important. That is a great. Yeah. It is absolutely.
Yeah, echo that.
I mean, there are really great things in here coming out. Somebody actually asking about if we want to mention like virtual interviews or whatever, because that's happened a lot again in the COVID piece, hasn't it? Yeah. At one stage, all interviews were done. You know, people summoned for interviews and all of that. Now there's a lot of virtual stuff, and particularly for partners and military spouses. So, I mean, I think we cover that. Leader, we're on the sort of presumably.
We absolutely do. We absolutely do. So we will go through every ounce of, you know, the interview prep, and that goes from starting off what to wear, how, you know, body language. We talk about, you know, doing your research about the company or the organisation you're going for. We do all of that, and then we encompass the sort of virtual element. I think a real good example of that is the civil service and the way that they do theirs, you know, with the pre-recording at the minute. You know, that can be really daunting when you're on a time limit of, 2 minutes per question, and ultimately it doesn't play you back and it just skips straight to the next question. But again, that's things that we can practice with. We do virtual tap in, so we will do like a sort of a Teams. I've done a few last week where we do Teams examples, and we do over and we check the equipment and make sure we sounds okay, and then we do go through the STAR techniques and all of that. So we do really touch upon virtual and what best and top tips to be able to go on and achieve that interview.
And it really is increasingly being not the norm, but even post lockdown, when people are applying for jobs and yet they can do it reasonably from home, why drag them halfway across the country to an interview? But it's a key part of it, isn't it? I know when it comes to sort of things like, it's a sort of a bit of an aside, but sort of media training, when if you're with a television camera on you, you have to do that. It used to be the case in the radio studios. It's great, it's sound. You don't have to worry about what you wear or look like, and all of that. And there's a slight element of that in an interview. In an interview, a virtual one, you can have a few things out, but of course now most radio studios have got cameras on you as well. So you've got to be a bit careful sometimes, haven't you? Having all your notes and stuff out.
And Alistair, just some people would say, is it really important to dress up? Can I just wear my pajama bottoms on the bottom? And I would be like, but what happens if your door goes and you have to get up to get it, and then stand up? So ultimately, it's just about that preparation, and it's things that you wouldn't think about because you think, well, they can only see me from here. But we can do all that and we can support with that. But virtual's definitely, it's going that way where more people are looking into virtual interviews.
Yeah, no, completely. It's a very valid point. And I just wonder if there's any other points. I'm just going back down to any more. There's some really great more comments, but a lot of people are all agreeing with Zoe's point, and also with other organisations. One of the Armed Forces Champions, the DWP, and supporting spouses as a part of this role. These charities are absolutely fantastic, and regularly get in contact with us if needs be. Yeah. Good. Are there? I mean, I have to say there's some fantastic top tips. I think you've just come up with a list. Has anyone got any other key things? I mean, I know I just added the thing about confidence. In a way, being able to fit in, and that comes back to the chameleon point, isn't it? Really, whatever the job is, it's not just people just used to having, stovepipe to do one particular thing. Fitting in whatever it is another key strength. But
I think from my point of view, and coming onto the RFEA program as well, I applied when my confidence was so low. I'd been out of employment for about 3 years, and I'd said to Lee on so many occasions, I just don't know how I'm going to do everything. My husband was deployed for about 8 months out of last year, and I remember Lee saying to me, if you don't do it now, then you will lose more confidence as time goes on. And if someone had said to me this time last year that I'll be sat here with the three of you and a live broadcast talking about, military spouses, the careers, and my wonderful job that I've got, I would never have believed it. It's having that confidence, and it's having someone in your corner helping you to believe in yourself, because you don't have much of an ecosystem around you. You rely on, so for example, today I've had to ask the next door neighbour to go and get my son. We ask people, you have to ask for help, and you have to reach out and, believe in yourself, because ultimately it does come down to you and what you want as well.
That's such a valid point, Jenny. It's so warming to hear you say that. And I think the confidence piece is so huge. And as you know, part of it, is sort of a stage thing. Quite a few spouses and partners, it's not a case of first meeting, right, but there's a lot of interviews, there's a lot of jobs options. Here's your CV, there's a process for some, and it is actually a conference before to get into the stage of tweaking CVs and stuff. So it might be some people are absolutely ready to submit an application, but others actually do need more support, and I think the programs do exactly that. So I
think we can understand, can't we, Alistair, because we are spouses ourselves. So on the programme, all our advisors, the advisors are spouses themselves, so they can relate to that. And I think what we did, Jenny, was we broke it down into pieces. So it wasn't so overwhelming. It wasn't a case of me just chucking you a load of stuff and going, right, go away, and come back. We broke it down into bits where it was manageable for you, because ultimately growth is the most important thing about this journey. It's dedicated So ultimately, that's what we worked on. And you put in the hard work and you achieved that. I was just there to be a little bit of a cheerleader as such, to be able to give you the bits that were maybe you couldn't see in yourself. So ultimately, you did that, you achieved that, and you're doing it. So ultimately, you know, that you're a prime example of a military spouse really, you know, pushing on and really achieving high things. So well done, you.
That's a great thing to say, Lee. Thank you very much indeed. I mean, and a great, a great case studies. And in fact, we're all, you know, fantastic living examples of what can be achieved in the area. So I think that's really sort of covered a fantastic amount of good top tips. I hope somebody was making notes for if people are wanting to, and they can, you know, this is real gold dust stuff. I think we should come across from what you said. So where are we? Yeah, this is a hugely important area. It's an area which has always been important, but frankly wasn't really perhaps treated as serious as it should have been years ago. Now it certainly is by the three services and by the defence, but more is needed to be done in that, and I think that we'll see more of that. And my goodness me, the support of the charities like RFEA, like the Forces Families Federations, the Army Families Federation, the Navy and the Air Force Families Federation, HEROPRENEURS, and a range of others as well. I know I can't list them all because there's quite a few in the ecosystem. There's a lot of support out there, and I think it is far more joined up and far more collaborative than it ever has been, and it's great. And I think there's so much good, so many great examples now, and that we can now show what people can be achieved by this amazing group of people. Just checking my last thing every day is another day of knowledge shared. That's lovely thing to finish off with. So anyway, I hope, ladies and gentlemen, you've enjoyed the past hour of chat about this really important subject. I think some brilliant topics, amazing top tips, and some experiences, which hopefully for those of you listening who are about to go through it or in the process of it or looking for support, or even those of you for the Ministry of Defence who are managing the processes and the policies. And so thank you all for listening and for some great comments and questions. And this will obviously be on YouTube. So if anyone wants to go back into it, just do log back in, and all the comments will be shown there as well. But anyway, a really fascinating hour from my perspective, and hopefully for everyone. And I'd just like to say thank you to everyone who's dialed in with these questions, and particular thank you to my guests, for Jenna, to Lee, and to Jenny. Thank you very much indeed for all you said, and I hope you have a fantastic rest of Friday and a lovely weekend. Thank you very much indeed. Bye.